there's things like that I kept calling, the spice, that sort of the magic elixir that Nick Cage brings to a performance, that when I'm writing or it's on the page, you write these words, and then, you look up, and then he says those words and does whatever nuance, facial expression or behavior he adds to it. And suddenly you're like, hey, that's pretty good.
Tim, this movie was really a lot of fun. I did not know what to expect going in, other than Nick Cage in a Hawaiian shirt, and I was in. But yeah, so where did the concept for this movie really first come about for you?
It was funny that it came from the location, and then once I knew the location, I asked myself a question. I said, "What if John Wick decided to finally retire and just become a drunk on the beach for 25 years, and then has to be, would he still have his quickness? Would he still have his abilities, kind of thing?" And I sort of posed myself that question, and then I sort of said, okay, well, let's put this person, this mad character, onto the beach, and we'll take him at that point in life where no one knows who he is, and then we'll present this granddaughter to him with a MacGuffin that all the bad guys try and come onto island to take. And of course, as per all the films through action history, one guy comes, then two guys come, then five guys come, and he's got to keep defeating more and more until he takes out the army. So it's like a poor man's Equalizer, if you will. But I think that's really in essence where it came from. It started with the location, and because I knew my partner was working on financing some films in the Cayman Islands, and I said, well, I have an idea. It's a loose idea, and then I hammered out a couple of maybe 60 or 70 shitty pages, and then slowly through time just kept rewriting and figuring it out, and ended up with the story that I had, and tried to keep it a little bit unconventional in an action genre. I'm a big fan of action comedy, and the idea of keeping it sort of unpredictable was really not following the formula, but in a way making fun of the formula. And there are times when I directly make fun of action genre films. I'm sure you might have picked up on it on some of the ones, but I think it's good to keep it light. And I think when it was COVID, so I thought, boy, let's keep this light. And I think that was subconsciously, maybe COVID came into play a little bit to keep my tone, again, light. I mentioned certainly to Greg, I'm a huge Shane Black fan, and the other guys I'm a huge fan of that movie. And in some ways, it's really silly. It's like a silly film that's still a serious action picture. But when he says, throw me the gun, and he throws it out the window, I thought that's what I want to capture, that essence where, something unpredictable happens, where in every action movie, the hero is supposed to catch the gun. Well, what if I just threw it out the window? Well, that's great, because for me, it's unexpected. And that's what I tried to capture as best I could. And having someone like Nick Cage in the lead role gave me that unpredictability in spades, which he brought so much nuance to the character that I didn't anticipate, certainly on the page. And then when he says it and has a certain facial expression or does a certain thing, that just takes it to a higher level, which is, why he's Nick Cage and I'm me.
Oh, I adore Shane Black. I rewatch The Nice Guys and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang all the time, especially when I'm writing, because it is so amazing how he blends those genres.
Totally. And Gay Perry.
Yeah, absolutely. Gay Perry kills me every
Val Kilmer's
time.
great roles. I mean, it's one of Val Kilmer's most unappreciated roles.
100%. It's my favorite of his personally.
Yeah, totally agree.
Tombstone Rules and everything. It's Gay Perry.
Yeah, The Doors. Sure, I'll give you those two. But yeah, for sure, he's good in this. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in talking about Nick, then, I mean, he is someone who I love that he has this resurgence of, high profile projects while still doing a lot of these, independently produced projects. So how did you go about approaching him, and did he need much talking to want to be on board for this one?
I approached him on my knees begging. That's how we went in. I think he was drawn to the comedy. And, what he told me, certainly, because I asked him the question, hey, why? And he said he just thought it was really funny. He loved the story, and he really loves family genre. As a fan, He's a massive fan of Asian cinema, in particular Kurosawa, and some other greats. And a lot of those films have family values as a theme. And, an underlying theme of this certainly is family. And Ernie Hudson said the same thing to me, that he was drawn to it because of that it was about a family. And so I think that was the main vibe that he was connected to it. And then he said to me that he just thought it was really funny. And Ashley Green said the same thing, that most of the scripts that they get that I think are independent, lower budget action pictures follow a template to a degree. Not that I'm not doing the same thing, but I like to add the comic element to it to make fun of the genre itself. And that's what Ashley said she found really refreshing about when she read it. She kept bursting out. And Jackie Earle Haley asked me, and he asked this, I think Nick asked the same way when they first read it. They said, is it supposed to be funny? I'm laughing, but it's a scene where I think it's not supposed to be funny. And I go, no, that's comedy for sure. I'm making fun of the genre itself. And I tried to sprinkle it through as much as I could. But I think that's what probably drew Nick, that was the family element and the comic element to it. And he brings a nuance that I don't think he gets enough respect for being a great, great comic actor. I don't know why he's not doing more comedies, because he brings a lot of those elements. There's a scene, I'll share you one story that he brought that I didn't anticipate. There's an action scene in the hotel room, and we were working on a very complex series of, kung fu moves for this guy to make. And I just said, you ever killed anyone with one punch? And he goes, yeah, I think it was The Rock, or I think it was Con Air. He goes, in Con Air, I killed someone with one punch. And I said, why don't you just chop him in the throat and I'll have him fall out of frame and you kill him dead? Because, with these movies and doing action scenes, you're not blessed with 2 weeks of rehearsal and, 6 weeks to shoot the scene. We've got 2 days to shoot the fight scene. And so with no rehearsal. And so you have to really find ways. And I just said at one point when they were going through a really complex set of moves, I said, just kill him by chopping him in the throat. So he does the scene. And as the stuntman, John, as his name, falls out of frame, John goes, and he kind of falls out of frame. And as he's falling out of frame, Nick looks at him and goes, and he makes fun of him. So I say, cut. I come in the room and Nick Cage looks immediately at me and says, you don't like it. And I go, what is it? I go, are you mocking John because I thought the stunt guy overdid the performance. So I was going to come in and go, okay, you got to tone that down a little. It was silly. And I said, are you mocking the actor for doing it too much? Or are you making fun of this guy for dying funny? And he goes, I'm making fun of him for dying funny. And I go, we're using it. He goes, you're not going to use it. I go, we're going to use it. And he literally kept saying, I don't think you're going to use that. And I said, no, we're going to use it. I think every time I screen the movie, that's one of the funniest parts in the movie is when he mocks this guy the way he dies. And then, there's things like that I kept calling, the spice, that sort of the magic elixir that Nick Cage brings to a performance, that when I'm writing or it's on the page, you write these words and then, you look up and then he says those words and does whatever nuance, facial expression or behavior he adds to it. And suddenly you're like, hey, that's pretty good. and I don't feel it's the words, but he could read the Bible or the dictionary. And I think he would you'd be riveted because he would do it in a way that's just a little different. And that to me is what makes him amazing, is that, as I say, the spice that he brings, it's a flavor. It's hard to explain, hard to describe. I think there's few actors that exist that everyone on set of the same thing. Everyone says the same thing, which was, what's your favorite Nick Cage movie? You don't say, what's your favorite Tom Cruise movie or what's your favorite George Clooney movie? It's not, he's the only one that has so many different iconic performances, from Raising Arizona to Adaptation to Con Air to anything. And they're all so different. Yet there's that underlying tone of the uniqueness that he brings to the table. And I think that's what makes him so incredible. And again, more nuanced than most actors, that they just don't bring that that much difference to the table. So he was so great to work with. I mean, I'd kill to work with him again for sure. As I'm sure any director who's worked with him says the same thing, that he's just phenomenal, a phenomenal partner.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, especially on the comedic part. I always thought he was had phenomenal comic timing, even in something like National Treasure. He's always finding a way to make any scene. If there's comedy to be had, he will work it in there, and it's great.
Yeah. Kick-Ass is a great example of that, where that character is a tragic, sad Bruce Wayne type character, and yet, he's clearly distraught, and the way he interacts with his daughter is goofy. And you're like, I don't know how he maintains that balance, but he did it for me as well, and just a joy to be around on set too. So I was super lucky to have him.
That's awesome. So one of the things too about this movie is the young girl whose name, I'm sorry, is escaping me at this moment.
Talia Campbell.
Yes, she is very much the heart of this movie, not just as a MacGuffin, but as a character in and of herself. And I love the rapport that she has with both Cage and Ron Perlman throughout the movie. And so, Ron and Nick, they're obviously seasoned veterans and they can make any scene work. But what was it like finding the right young actor who would be able to embody that character and play off of these two seasoned vets?
Yeah, it's, child actors, finding a gifted one. The one thing that's really consistent with I've done a few as a producer and as a director. I've done a few kids movies. So I've really been through a lot of auditions with young kids, and my kids are 20 now, but I've raised two kids, and we've experienced film along the way. And, I got along really well with Thalia, but when I was auditioning the kids, they were doing it remotely. So everyone was sending in tapes. And me and the producer would watch, probably about 100 auditions, and we would go through these tapes. And eventually, when I saw Thalia, I put her aside and said, yes, she's fantastic. And then I called her up and said I wanted to do, I gave her some exercises to do, gave her some more things to do in the dialogue. She came back to me. She did what I asked her to do. Part of the thing that I always find with kid actors is that you don't want to force them to act. That when you audition them, whatever that is, if I see the character in the audition, that's why kids should never be upset when they don't pass an audition, because what I think the director is trying to find is something where they don't have to range them out too much. There's very few kids like Haley Joel Osment who at a young age could articulate in a different levels, and different nuanced abilities of character and change. So you want to avoid that problem on set where you're trying to really direct someone to be something they're not. So Thalia, her audition was so good and she seemed so natural. And as I said to her, she said, what's the most important thing for me? And I said, to know your lines. That's it. That if you know your lines and you just say as, calmly, then you'll be fine. Then she did a couple more performances and she just got better and better. And I told the producer that, we gotta go with her. And it was great because I called her up on a Zoom and said, so, you got the part. And, I literally get teared up thinking about it, because when you see a kid realize they get a big part, they go bananas. And that's why I wanted to see her on camera when I told her she had got the part, just to see that reaction. But when part of the contract with Nick is that, he approves co-stars. So I sent him the tape, and I'd called my producer and I said, I've had such a hard time finding this girl to play Sarah. And we got this girl who's phenomenal and she's perfect for the role. And I'd hate to think that, what if Nick doesn't like her? Like, what if Nick says, oh, she's not good enough? And so I spent 2 nights after we sent her tape flipping out, because I just said to him that if he says no, I'm going to fight him on it, because she's perfect for the part. And he called me and he said, by the way, who is Thalia? I watched her tape. She is fantastic. She was so prepared, so ready every day. So when she's up against, and Ron's not a small guy, like Ron can be an intimidating individual if he wants to be. And he's proven that time and time again in cinema. And he was amazing to work with. And, what's amazing about Ron is I said, would you spend some time with Thalia? So when Thalia got to Island, Ron just Ron just took her to lunch, took her to dinner. They went out. They would hang out with their mom, and he would just run lines with her on his days off, no problem. What do you need, Thalia? And then he just fell deeply for her. I mean, he just said she is the sweetest, kindest thing you'd ever want to meet in your life. And she's a total pro and totally prepared, but just so easy to work with. Fantastic. Loved working with Thalia. And I'm so thrilled that Ron just thought she was so good at what she did that I think he continued to get better with her. I mean, silly to say, but I think I think she helped him. And he's the 40, 50 year vet now. And Nick said the same thing, that she was so cool through the whole process. I don't think she screwed up ever. Very rarely would she ever mess a line. Never. I mean, and she's in it a fair bit. So yeah, she was terrific, and I was so thrilled to have her.
That's incredible. She does such a great job in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, she reminded me a lot of Faith Herman from the Shazam movies, someone who at a young age, I can already tell is going to be a star in the near future.
Oh yeah.
So
she will be for sure. And that's what Ron said to me. You watch out. She's going to be big, because she's just naturally good. And, when you look at 100 other tapes, and she was head and shoulders, there wasn't even I just said to Nick, who's my producer, there's no one else. She's the one. And because one of the things that Nick and I would do is we'd take the audition tapes and then we'd make separate notes. We didn't want to convince each other of anything. So then we came in blank and we both wrote Thalia number one. So we said, okay, this is obviously the way we're going to do this. So yeah, she was great. I talked to her mother just the other day. She was asking about the movie. So yeah, she's really sweet. She's probably 30 now. I don't even know. It's been a couple of years. I probably wouldn't even recognize her.
It's crazy how youngins grow up fast. I will say that.
Yeah, true.
True. Now, in talking about Ron, I love that he almost feels like against type in this movie, because he does start as sort of that brooding thug, but then as the movie goes on, he breaks down those walls of vulnerability with Sarah, and it's just something that is so warm to see from him. And so I'm curious what it was like, casting him in that role. Did you have that in mind as well of getting him because it's something different, or did that just kind of work out the way it did?
I think I wrote Bobo a little bit like Marv from Sin City. He was just sort of like this really intimidating guy who could kill you. But then I wanted to find a way to take that, super hard rock exterior and slowly break it down. And how do you do that? Well, you do it through this innocent girl. And even though he Bobo has maybe killed people in the past who are kids, it's feasible. And that he's unemotional about it. And that's when he says to her, I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to dump your body in the ocean, and then I'm going to get pizza. And then she's terrified. But then slowly through time, she gets to him. And that's why what I did was I use Othello for them to become Othello and Iago. And of course she ultimately betrays him for all the right reasons, which everyone is telling me they're all bummed about, but and so did Ron. Ron's like, you don't want to get rid of Bobo. Everyone will hate you for it. So he wasn't far off. That's what everyone's telling me. But the relationship between those two, and I really wanted this Marv type character to slowly break down until the point where, he's going to break every code he's ever had in his life that he's lived by his whole life. And he's going to throw it aside. And the moment he does that, he's going to get screwed. So, to me, that's sort of the way it's supposed to happen. And I think Ron got a lot from Thalia in working with her. I don't know if another actor would have been able to pull Ron in that direction. But yeah, he starts off, hard, not caring, into the, stone cold killer, as they say. Into this guy who's like, maybe I shouldn't be a stone cold killer. Maybe I've made a mistake somewhere along the line. And I wrote a really detailed biography for Bobo, and I gave it to him and about his whole life, who raised him, how he was raised. And it was because I made him smart. And so many of these thug characters, there's no nuance to them. And I thought, well, what if this guy was really well read? What if this guy read Dickens? What if this guy read Shakespeare? And that's how I created the character. And I even made fun of, I think the new generation where you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover anymore. And when she says to him, he says, well, you look at me, you think I don't know Shakespeare, that's a legitimate thing for someone like that to say. And then he's like, I'm just busting your balls. Don't worry about it. And he plays that just perfectly because he explains exactly what happens. I'm Oliver Twist. And that was the biography I wrote, was basically Bobo was born into the streets. A very rich man took him in, taught him everything he needs to know. And then through circumstance, he was tossed out of that rich man's life and he went down the wrong path. And that's why he keeps talking about circumstance, which really is his whole existence, that me and Oliver Twist were one and the same because of circumstance. I was street bound, I was saved, and then I made a mistake because of circumstance. And I've lived the life that I've lived because of that mistake. And I think she takes that to be full circle, and he does it again. So yeah, I'm glad you noted on that part of the story. It was certainly one of my favorite parts, is the story of Bobo and Sarah. I think I got to do a prequel. Bobo and Sarah, or to be something, maybe. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
I'd love to see it because, I'm sorry to say I'm in the majority of everybody else. Getting rid of Bobo did hurt to see.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Yeah.
He was such a great character, but at the same time, he like we say, he made that final bad choice. So it is what it is. But in talking, you mentioned earlier the action scene in the hotel, and that is a great fight scene. And the action throughout this movie is really well shot and really well executed on a budget like this. I mean, how do you go about, like you mentioned earlier, you don't have much rehearsal time or whatnot.
So zero.
Yeah. So how did you go about, making sure that all of this was right? And did you have to cut any sequences from the script that you originally had envisioned because of that?
We had an issue surrounding the marina scene with that, where I was definitively restricted. There are certain elements with budget and remote location where everyone's under quarantine. We're getting anything. The island of Cayman does not have a dolly. They don't have a camera. They don't have a lens. So everything had to be brought in. So, when you're working remotely like that, extra wardrobe, extra props, you don't have it. So the marina scene was a scene written with a lot of weapons and automatic weapons and guns. And, we weren't, unfortunately, there was a lot of restrictions around bringing weapons, even fake ones, into the island. So, that was a scene where, we didn't have anything. So I immediately just start to going back to rewrite and figure out, okay, well, if I don't have a shotgun, then how do I got a prop hand grenade. How can I reverse engineer, which is pretty much what you do, is like, what do I have to play with? And then I take all those. I got a flare gun, I got a hand grenade, I got a wooden gun, I've got whatever. Now, how do I take those elements and then, get them to where I need to be? So I start with the elements and then I go back. It's like, okay, how do I shoot a guys in the mouth with a flare gun? I know that's where I want to get to. And I just got to figure out the route to get there, basically. So I've always argued that Jaws is one of the great movies of all time because of the problems. And what happened with Jaws, which was probably a pretty paint by numbers thriller about a shark killing people, and then guys going to kill the shark, became an amazing character piece. I think Jaws is one of the great character films of all time. Like, it could be a play. I think it is a play now, but the dynamic between the three, between Quint and between Brody and the three leads is really that. It's not about the shark. It's the essence of their relationship, which makes the film phenomenal. And so I look at things like that, and I don't think that would have happened if the shark didn't keep breaking down, where you're forced as a director, because of budgetary concerns, if I can't get a helicopter to crash into the hotel, but I need him to get over the balcony, it forces me to dive into the material. And the moment you dive back into the material, I think you find a great creative solution for an economic problem. And that creative solution, 9 times out of 10, makes the film better. Because instead of just adding more money and making it work, you're forced to go back, look at the material and go, how can I rewrite this that's more exciting than a helicopter crashing? And that I've always felt, that those financial problems make for better movies, because it forces you back into the material. Because once you've written something, you kind of feel like, I'm writing a script now and I'm on my fifth or sixth draft, and I thought the third draft was there. And then you're like, no, it's not even, you kind of want to like finish it and put it aside and, I'm done, like a Vegas dealer. But, then the more you dive into it, you're like, it's getting better. I got to keep diving into the material to make it better. And I think that those economic challenges definitely require a lot of creative solutions. So that's where I think I'm able to work that through. And Mark Irwin brought a ton to the table as the DP of the film. Mark's got an incredible resume. He's worked with David Cronenberg. He's worked with the Farley brothers. I think he's done 8 or 9 Cronenberg films. So, I got to use that resume and 40 years of, behind the camera experience for him to say, I'll say, I need to get the POV over the thing. And he'll say, no, you don't. You just need to blah, blah, blah. And we can do that through this way. And I'm like, show me how you do that. And then, so we would walk through how we'd fix that sequence. And I was really lucky. I had a great rigger, Martin, who literally just came off a Mission Impossible. So he came out to the island with us, and he was rigging the guys off the hotel. And we were just, I think it was just a combination of anything else. It's a tremendous collaboration in finding ways to, with not a lot of money, to still entertain and still make it action. Because, I think my entire budget was the catering budget on Mission Impossible. So it's a bit of a different beast.
I think the creative reworking was great. I think the scene, the marina scene as it is such an exciting one, partially because it is so handheld with everybody versus some big shootout. So it's a lot of fun. And as someone who is a few drafts and do multiple scripts myself, I very much know that feeling of going back in and feeling better as it goes on. So
you don't want to. You never want to.
No.
I hate it. I hate it. But when it's done, you're like, oh, that's so much. I'm glad I did it. It's better. It only gets better.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you did. I'm glad you took the time. And I think I'm almost out of time here. So I will go ahead and wrap up and let you go. But Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's awesome to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to spreading the word, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.